Welcome to Hanging Out with Robert, that's me. This video contains things that I encounter throughout the day. If for some reason I complete a task and you would like to see the details, you can click on the link in the description area below. This video also contains tips and tricks that I learned throughout the years. I plan on leaving this video accessible for about 30 days. After that, you can view it through my Patreon account. Thank you very much for watching. Here we go, folks. About to kick off the Tinker Day on this beautiful S70. Again, I just want to remind you guys, this is what new seats look like on a 25-year-old car. Whew. Woo woo. I don't know if this thing got rear heated seats or not. Yep, rear heated seats. Primary concern with this vehicle was a coolant leak. I did the water pump and stopped that leak. He thought it was this crossover pipe on the back end. Man, I come here, there's coolant on the oil filter, which means it's normally coming from the front of the engine. We got a little bit of coolant there, which is on the top side of the housing, and a lot of coolant down there. So it looks like a little bit of coolant is getting past this silicone hose. I'm not a big fan of silicone hoses. The clamp doesn't seem to be straight on there. So we're going to reposition that clamp. You can see a little bit of wetness around that hose. It's probably where all this coolant is leaking out from. So we're going to change the thermostat. We're going to change the coolant temp sensor. We're going to reposition this hose, put this stuff back together, and it should be good to go. Run it around, test it, make sure we don't have no more coolant leaks. Then we got some PCV parts. Somebody put a URO hose on here that, quickly came apart on them. We got some of those parts. We're going to do the test of the PCV system, make sure it's serviceable. And if it is, we're not going to dig into the engine, just change the damaged parts. Which, it's always a concern messing with that stuff because you got this wraparound pipe. You start bumping in and leaning on that, that'll break. So, man, that spring seems a little loose on that throttle. I don't know if that's broke or not. I'm going to take a closer look at that too. Temperature gauge has not been running at 3 o'clock. It's been running a little higher like at 2. So we put a new Volvo ECT in it. Cleaned off the thermostat housing. We're putting a new thermostat in it, and we're gonna take this thing for a drive, make sure we don't have any leaks. One thing I did struggle with, I struggled with getting this off of the top of the thermostat housing. Couldn't figure out why. I didn't have the clearance between the corner of the fuel rail and the power steering pump, so I had to take the screws out of the fuel rail and scoot it over a little bit to work this thing out. Then I remember him telling me he's got the IPD phenolic intake manifold spacer. That moved the intake manifold out about 1/4 of an inch. That took away the clearance I needed. The silicone hose is slipperier than the rubber hoses, so you gotta make sure this thing is really clean. So I cleaned that off good. I scraped off the crustation with a screwdriver. I polished it up with Scotch-Brite pad and then clean that up real good. And on these ETC sensors, these wires are supposed to have rubber on them that keep them in the connector. That rubber deteriorates over time. If you look down in there, you can see the rubber is still on there. However, the rubber is no longer on the wire, stopping the connector from sliding out of the holder. So I actually push them through. Then I plug them in to the ETC, and then I slide the connector, the housing together. Because if you don't do that, you may not have a good connection. While you're trying to plug it in, those wires are backing out of the housing. So this should cure that. Everything back together. Tighten this hose clamp as tight as I could get it without causing that hose clamp to spring loose, like stripping it. I got that as close as I could to the power steering reservoir. Keep that on. We put a new tube on here for the ECU box. Top the coolant back off. It's a little bit below the line. We're going to top it off right to the line and take this thing for a test drive and hook up the scan gauge and monitor temperature. That connection was a little loose. I had to squeeze the plug close a little bit to get it to hold on what I thought was a fair amount. We're going to be monitoring the temp, making sure the temp gauge goes over to 3 o'clock. See how long it takes to get there. We're at 128.755 and we're going to hit the road. We're up 137, 141. Whoa boy, almost didn't see that stop sign. Let me make a right turn out of here. Getting close, 163. We're up at 172, almost 3 o'clock. I don't know if that's 1 mile or a mile and a half. Go up here and take a right, go up along the freeway. There's an interstate in front of us going over the road. But we're pretty much up to temp right now. And the gauge is straight across. It should stay there. And unless we hit over 235. This car has a bad synchro. I'm going to let you guys hear it. Every time you go into second, it grinds. Pushing the clutch, pull it in second. I'm going to go in first. Now I'm going to shift to second. That's how the bad synchro does, makes the gears grind. It's okay going to third, but that second is bad. We're up to 190, and we're right at 3 o'clock on the gauge. 131 on the miles. I took a corner a little faster than I wanted to, and man, these tires, they rolled a little bit. I didn't like the way that felt. Gotta be careful when you don't have low profile tires. They grip, but it was a little scary. I don't know if this thing has IPD anti-roll bars or not. I'm gonna take a look and see. We took a look at the suspension on that Lexus. It had some aftermarket parts on there. Probably gonna put OEM parts back on it. And this thing had a boot torn open, CV axle. Now, the worse that boot gets torn open, the more dirt, grime, water, etc. that can get in there and start wearing out your carriage and your bearings in there. So this boot is starting to crack. So we got inner and outer boots, and we're replacing these, popping the clips off, cleaning all that stuff totally out. And then we're going to put new grease, new boots on there, and reinstall this thing. So got the boots on, the clamps on. I actually put this boot on backwards, had to pull the end back off to flip the boot around, put it back on. But we got the clamps in place, and these are the pliers for those clamps. Now, I have done these with side cutters, and when you tighten this clamp, you only want to tighten it until you see the boot start pudging, and then you stop, because you're just trying to hold the boot in place. You're not trying to clamp it down on there. So there it is. You see the boot start bulging just a little bit. You stop it there. It's not coming off. Same for down here. Those pliers on there. Start to squeeze that in place. Make sure your boot's where it's supposed to be. And as soon as you see that start bulging, you stop. You don't want that to be the source of cutting your boot and starting fresh boot decay. So that's good to go. Ready to put this back on. Each joint has 2 packets of grease. And as that grease heats up when you're driving along, it sloshes that grease around in there and keeps those bearings lubricated really well. The Volvo kit comes with new clips and new bolts. You can actually find the one that fits on there and use it. So you got fresh bolts on your CVs. This is I think a 32, and these are probably 36. We are still dry. Coolant level good. Got this CV axle, control arm, wheel back on and torqued. Ready to do the other side. Got this joint apart, all cleaned up, together, ready for the grease. Got most of the grease out of there, getting ready to spray it down with brake parts cleaner. And man, I am cramping up like crazy. My arms, my hands. I had to run to the corner store and get some Gatorade or something. I've drank a couple bottles of water, still cramping up, so I'm gonna go hit some Gatorade and hopefully that'll hydrate me. I'll be right back to finish this up. Folks, I am all done. I got the wheel torque back on, of course the CV axle torque back on. I just gotta clean up my mess, put my tools away, clean everything up, close this thing down, load up Panther so I can hit the road in the morning. Thank you very much for watching. If you feel that this information was useful, please like it and share it with your social media friends. You can subscribe to my channel so that you will get notifications of future videos that I post. You can follow me on Twitter, and if you need to contact me directly, please visit my website. And if you have any questions, leave them below, and someone or myself will reply to them. Again, thank you very much for watching.